Los Angeles, March 2, 1943. The Ambassador Hotel Ballroom on Wilshire Boulevard, 1,500 people in evening wear packed into a space designed for elegance, not capacity. Chandeliers reflecting off champagne glasses that waiters refill with mechanical precision every 7 minutes. Orchestra warming up in the corner, violins tuning to piano, the discordant pre-performance sound that always precedes harmony. 3 cameras positioned at calculated angles, stage left, stage right, balcony center. NBC radio microphones testing levels, engineers checking connections twice then checking again, making sure every word broadcasts clear to the 18 million homes across America where families gather around wooden radios, children sitting cross-legged on carpet, parents in armchairs, everyone waiting to hear which Hollywood dreams won official validation tonight. The 15th Academy Awards ceremony about to begin. Outside, searchlights sweep the March sky. Inside, cigarette smoke drifts toward Art Deco ceiling fixtures that cost the hotel owner $30,000 in 1921. Women in gowns that cost more than most Americans earn in 6 months, silk, satin, hand-sewn beading, design sketched by Adrian and Ori Kelly and Edith Head. Men in tuxedos tailored on Savile Row or expertly copied by Hollywood's costume departments, the difference invisible to anyone who doesn't know where to look. Jewelry that catches chandelier light and throws it back in fractured rainbows across white tablecloths. Faces powdered for the cameras. Lipstick reapplied 3 times before arriving. Smiles practiced in mirrors until they look unrehearsed. Hairstyled to appear effortless while requiring 2 hours and a team of 3. This is Hollywood at its most Hollywood. The industry celebrating itself while the world burns. Because outside this ballroom, beyond the searchlights and the red carpet and the carefully maintained illusion, the war continues. Boys dying on beaches in Guadalcanal. Cities burning in Germany. Submarine warfare in the Atlantic. Rationing. Blackouts. Censored letters arriving from overseas with whole paragraphs blacked out. Gold stars appearing in windows. Mothers answering doors to Western Union telegrams they know contain 3 words before opening, "We regret to inform." But inside this room, for one night, America pretends the war is somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't interrupt the champagne or the speeches or the carefully orchestrated celebration of an industry that sells dreams to a nation that desperately, urgently needs them. James Cagney sits at table 7, 3rd row from the stage. Not front row. Front row is reserved for studio heads and producers and executives. The people who own the dreams. The people who finance the illusions. The people who make the decisions about which scripts get greenlit and which actors get cast and which films get wide release versus limited distribution. Power sits in the front row. Money sits in the front row. Control sits in the front row. Actors sit in the 3rd row, close enough to reach the stage quickly when their name is called for Best Actor or Best Actress or Best Supporting. Far enough to remember their place in the hierarchy that runs Hollywood more efficiently than any organizational chart. Cagney wears a black tuxedo. White shirt, bow tie slightly crooked because he tied it himself this morning in the mirror of his Los Angeles home. Refused the studio assistant who arrived at 2 p.m. offering to help him dress, offering to drive him to the ceremony in a studio car, offering to manage every detail of this evening because that's what studios do. They manage, they control, they ensure nothing happens that wasn't scripted in advance, rehearsed twice, approved by 3 departments. Cagney sent the assistant away, drove himself, tied his own tie. His wife Frances sits beside him in a dark green gown, her hair styled simply, her makeup understated compared to the other women in the room who look like they're wearing their faces instead of their faces wearing makeup. Frances's hand rests on the white tablecloth, not touching Cagney's hand, just near it, close enough to steady without suffocating, close enough to remind him she's there without demanding attention. She knows him, has known him since they were teenagers in New York's Lower East Side, before Hollywood existed in his mind, before fame was even a concept he entertained, before any of this seemed possible or desirable. She knows what this moment costs. Not money, not effort, something else, something that doesn't have a clean word in English or any other language. The price of proving yourself to people who never wanted you to succeed in the first place. The cost of winning when victory itself is supposed to be impossible. Cagney is 43 years old tonight. 5'5" in shoes with built-up heels. 150 pounds after a big meal. Looks smaller than that in a room full of men who are 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, built like the cowboys and soldiers and leading men they play on screen. Cagney doesn't look like a leading man. Doesn't look like a star. Looks like someone who wandered into the wrong room. Looks like the kind of person studio executives dismiss in casting meetings because we need someone with more presence. But Cagney has presence, different kind, the kind that doesn't come from height or weight or conventional handsomeness. Comes from something in the eyes, something in the way he moves. Economy of motion, efficiency, no wasted gesture, every movement serving a purpose, every expression calculated to communicate precisely what needs communicating and nothing more. 20 years in Hollywood. Started in 1922, extra work, background roles, the bottom of the bottom. Worked his way up through small parts, supporting roles, finally leads in the early 1930s when talking pictures created demand for actors who could actually act, who could deliver dialogue with rhythm and timing and energy that made audiences forget they were watching actors read lines. Cagney could act, could move, could dance, could fight, could do everything, but Hollywood decided early what he would do forever. Decided in 1931 with Public Enemy when he played a violent criminal who dies bloody in the street. That performance made him a star, also made him a prisoner. Because after Public Enemy, that's all Hollywood wanted. Gangster, criminal, violent man with gun in hand and sneer on face. Die bloody, die young, die entertaining. 63 films in 20 years. Gangster in 42 of them. Gun in hand, blood on pavement. That's what the industry knows. That's what America expects. That's the cage they built around him, bar by bar, film by film, until the cage became his identity and his identity became the cage. But tonight is different. He's nominated for Best Actor. Not for shooting someone, not for dying in the street, not for Public Enemy or Angels with Dirty Faces or The Roaring Twenties or any of the 42 times he played variations on the same violent theme. Nominated for dancing, for singing, for smiling, for playing George M. Cohan in Yankee Doodle Dandy, a patriotic song and dance man who loved America and never killed anyone on screen and represented everything wholesome and optimistic and pure about the country during World War I, complete opposite of every role Cagney had played for a decade. A role Warner Brothers told him he'd never get. Too violent, too ethnic, too typecast, too old, 43 playing a man who ages from 25 to 65 across 2 hours. Too short, too associated with gangsters. The studio said no, the producers said no, the executives said no, the critics said he couldn't do it before they'd even seen him try because critics are excellent at predicting failure and terrible at imagining transformation. So Cagney did what actors in 1941 simply did not do. He formed his own production company, Cagney Productions, found independent financing, convinced United Artists to distribute, made Yankee Doodle Dandy himself, took the financial risk, took the career risk, took the risk that failure wouldn't just kill this project but would validate every studio executive who said typecasting exists because audiences don't want to see actors change, they want to see actors repeat. He took the risk, made the film, proved every single one of them wrong. Yankee Doodle Dandy opened May 29, 1942. 9 months ago, critics called it a revelation, used words like astonishing and transformative and proof that James Cagney is not just a great gangster actor but a great actor, period. Box office called it a phenomenon, made $11 million, becoming the highest-grossing Warner Brothers film of 1942, outselling Casablanca, outselling everything. Audiences called it joy, pure American joy projected onto screens across a country that desperately needed joy because outside those theater walls, boys were dying in places with names Americans couldn't pronounce, and inside, James Cagney danced and sang and reminded people what America felt like before the war consumed everything. The film succeeded beyond anyone's projections, beyond Cagney's hopes, beyond the most optimistic box office predictions. It succeeded so completely that it proved something dangerous, proved Cagney didn't need Warner Brothers. Proved he could produce his own films, choose his own roles, control his own career, proved the 7-year contracts that owned actors like property were built on a lie. The lie that studios made stars. The truth, stars made studios. Studios just controlled distribution, controlled marketing, controlled access, but the actual talent, the actual product audiences paid to see, that came from the actors. And if actors realized they were the product, not the property, the entire Hollywood system would collapse. Warner Brothers couldn't afford that revelation going public, couldn't afford other actors getting ideas, couldn't afford James Cagney becoming a symbol of actor independence. So they did what studios do when they can't control the narrative directly. They undermined it quietly, delayed the release, limited the theater bookings initially, cut the advertising budget by 40%, scheduled the premiere opposite 2 other major releases to split the audience, made sure critics received screeners late so early reviews couldn't build buzz. Pulled strings with theater owners to keep the film out of premium houses in major cities. Every small decision designed to hurt the film just enough. Not kill it completely, that would be too obvious. Just damage it enough that Cagney would come back humbled, grateful, ready to pick up another gun and die in another gutter for another gangster picture and never try independence again. Except audiences didn't care about studio politics. Audiences cared about the film. Word of mouth spread. People saw it, told friends, saw it again, brought family. The film succeeded despite Warner Brothers, not because of them. Succeeded so completely it couldn't be ignored. Couldn't be buried, couldn't be explained away. Cagney knew this, felt it in every delayed phone call from studio executives who suddenly had scheduling conflicts when Yankee Doodle Dandy needed marketing support. Felt it in every reduced budget meeting where promotion dollars got reallocated to other films. Felt it in the silence from Jack Warner, who didn't call to congratulate him when the film became a hit, didn't send a telegram when the Oscar nomination came through, didn't do any of the small gracious things studio heads do for their contract stars. Because Cagney wasn't behaving like a contract star. Contract stars do what they're told. Play the roles assigned. Don't question. Don't sue. Don't form independent production companies. Don't prove the system is negotiable. Cagney proved the system is negotiable. Proved it in 1936 when he sued Warner Brothers for better pay and role selection. That lawsuit made headlines. Cagney sues studio. The industry treated it like treason. Like a soldier shooting his commanding officer. Actors don't sue studios. That's not how Hollywood works. Studios have power. Actors have careers. Power controls careers. That's the arrangement. That's the understanding. Breaking that understanding doesn't just hurt your career. It ends your career. Other studios won't hire you because you're marked. You're difficult. You're someone who doesn't respect the system. And Hollywood runs on system. Respect the system or leave. Cagney didn't leave. Fought the lawsuit. Settled. Won better terms. Set a precedent that actors could negotiate, could push back, could demand control over their careers instead of surrendering control as condition of employment. But the industry never forgot. Never forgave. This Oscar nomination, it's not just recognition of his performance in Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's warfare. If Cagney wins for a non-gangster role, it proves typecasting is a lie. Proves actors can be more than the boxes studios build for them. Proves the system is negotiable. Proves independence is possible. Hollywood doesn't like negotiable. Hollywood doesn't like possible. Hollywood likes control. The ceremony begins. Bob Hope hosts. Opens with jokes about the war, about rationing, about Hollywood's contribution to morale. Laughter fills the room. Polite. Automatic. The kind of laughter that happens at industry events where everyone understands their role. Laugh at the host's jokes. Applaud the winners. Look gracious when you lose. Maintain appearances. That's the game. Minor awards first. Sound, editing, short subjects, documentary, the technical categories that most of America doesn't understand but that make the actual making of films possible. Technicians come to the stage. Accept their statuettes. Give short speeches thanking crews and studios and the Academy. Return to their tables. Ceremony continues. Efficient, professional, moving toward the major categories, the ones people actually care about, the ones that get the radio audience, the ones that matter. Cagney doesn't watch. His eyes track the room instead. Table 1, Jack Warner, head of Warner Brothers. The man who built the studio from nothing, who survived bankruptcy in the silent era, who bet everything on sound and won. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, tuxedo that fits perfectly because it was made for him by a tailor who measures studio heads 6 times before cutting fabric. Warner sits straight, doesn't slouch. Posture of control, posture of a man who owns things. Jack Warner owns Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns contract actors. Therefore, Jack Warner owns actors. That's the logic. That's the system. Cagney is sitting 3 rows back from the man who technically owns him for 3 more years according to a contract signed in 1939. Sitting here nominated for an Oscar Warner Brothers tried to prevent. Winning would be revenge, would be validation, would be proof that independence works. Table 2, Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, the biggest studio in Hollywood, the most powerful man in the industry. Larger than Warner, more ruthless, more effective. MGM doesn't just make films. MGM makes stars. Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, Clark Gable, actors who owe everything to the studio that discovered them, shaped them, packaged them for America. Mayer believes in the star system, believes studios create stars, believes actors are interchangeable products that become valuable only through studio investment. James Cagney proves that belief wrong. Cagney made himself. Started as an extra, built his career through work, through craft, through refusing to be limited by what studios wanted. Mayer doesn't like actors who make themselves. Makes the whole system look replaceable. Table 4, Darryl Zanuck, 20th Century Fox. Younger than Warner and Mayer. More volatile, more willing to gamble, but still a studio head. Still believes in control. Still believes actors need studios more than studios need actors. These are the men who run Hollywood. The men who decide which dreams get funding and which dreams die in development hell. The men who own the machinery that creates the illusions America buys tickets to see. They sit in the front row. James Cagney sits in the 3rd row. Geography is hierarchy. Distance is power. Everyone in this room understands the layout. Understands what it means. Francis whispers something. Cagney doesn't hear it. His mind is elsewhere, thinking about 1936. The lawsuit, the betrayal he felt when Warner Brothers refused to pay him fairly, refused to give him role selection, treated him like property instead of a person. The betrayal he felt when other studios refused to hire him during the lawsuit because that's how blacklisting works in Hollywood. Not formal, not documented, just calls between studio heads, just informal agreements, just a unified front against actors who get ideas. Cagney broke that front, broke it by being too valuable to blacklist permanently, by being too popular to bury completely, by being too good at his job for studios to ignore indefinitely. He won the lawsuit, won better terms, but he paid for it. Paid in opportunities lost, paid in roles that went to other actors, paid in the permanent label of difficult that follows him through every negotiation. The ceremony continues. Best Supporting Actress. Teresa Wright wins. Short speech. Gracious. Appropriate. Best Supporting Actor. Van Heflin. Longer speech. Thanks everyone. Lists names. The format is standard. Win. Stand. Walk to stage. Accept statuette. Thank people. Return to seat. Repeat. Documentary awards. The room is warm now. Too warm. March in Los Angeles shouldn't be this warm, but 1,500 bodies in a closed ballroom generate heat faster than ventilation can remove it. Sweat forms at Cagney's collar, dampens the white shirt under his tuxedo jacket. He doesn't loosen the bow tie, doesn't remove his jacket, doesn't show discomfort. That's another lesson from 20 years in this industry. Never show weakness. Never give them the photograph of you wilting under pressure. Never let them see you struggle, because struggling means you're not handling it, and not handling it means you're not professional, and not being professional means you're replaceable. Cagney stays still, jacket buttoned, tie straight, face neutral, sweat invisible under stage lights that feel like interrogation lamps. Best Actress. Greer Garson wins for Mrs. Miniver. Walks to the stage, accepts her Oscar, begins her speech. Her speech continues, and continues. 7 minutes of gracious thank yous. Thanking the director, the producer, the studio, the cast, the crew, the writer, the costume designer, the makeup artist, the set designer, the person who brought coffee to set, the person who held the boom microphone. Everyone. Every possible person who contributed in any possible way to the film. 7 minutes of performative gratitude. 7 minutes of telling the industry exactly what it wants to hear, that success is collaborative, that studios make stars possible, that actors owe their careers to the system that employs them. People shift in seats. Polite applause that starts to feel like obligation, starts to feel like endurance. 7 minutes is a long time. Long enough for the orchestra to wonder if they should play her off. Long enough for the host to wonder if he should intervene. Long enough for everyone in the room to remember this moment as the Oscar speech that wouldn't end. Cagney watches, takes notes mentally, not about what to say, about what not to say, about how gratitude can become performance, how thank yous can become politics, how an acceptance speech isn't just thanks. It's a public statement of debt, an acknowledgement of hierarchy, a reinforcement of the system that gave you the award. Greer Garson finishes. Finally, applause, relief more than approval. Then, the moment, the one people came for, the category that matters. And now, Best Actor. The presenter opens the envelope. Gary Cooper presenting. Tall, handsome, represents everything Hollywood thinks a leading man should be. 6'3", strong jaw, all-American, the kind of actor who gets cast as heroes, as cowboys, as men who save the day and get the girl. Gary Cooper represents the system working exactly as designed. Star created by studio, career managed by handlers, image carefully controlled, success measured in box office dollars and awards. Everything James Cagney isn't. Cagney's jaw tightens, not dramatically, just a millimeter, muscle engaging, barely visible to anyone not watching carefully. The way a fighter's fist closes before the bell rings. Automatic, physiological, body preparing for impact even when the mind stays calm. Francis's hand moves, 3 inches across white tablecloth. Now touching his, palm to palm, pressure, steady, not squeezing, not demanding response, just present, just saying without words, I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here. She knows, has known him since they were teenagers, knows what this moment means. Not pride, not validation, something else, something that doesn't have a clean word. The feeling of proving wrong every person who tried to make you smaller than you are. The feeling of succeeding in the exact way they said you couldn't. The feeling of breaking free from the cage they built and flying while they watch. Gary Cooper opens the envelope, pauses, looks at the card, smiles slightly. James Cagney, Yankee Doodle Dandy. The room erupts. Standing ovation. Instant. 1,500 people on their feet. Applause like thunder. Genuine, not polite industry applause. Real applause. The kind that happens when people who understand craft recognize excellence. When people who work in film see a performance that transcends technique and becomes art. Even the studio heads stand. They have to. Cameras watching, radio broadcasting, 18 million Americans listening. Appearances matter, must look gracious, must look supportive, must look like the system works, like studios and actors collaborate harmoniously towards shared artistic goals. But watch their faces. Watch carefully. Watch Jack Warner in row 1. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Mouth curves upward. Eyes stay flat. That's not joy. That's management. That's a man doing what's required while calculating next moves. Watch Louis B. Mayer. His applause is 3 seconds shorter than everyone else's. Tops clapping while others continue. Small statement. Silent message. Watch Daryl Zanuck. Looks at his watch while standing. Checking the time. Wondering when this will end. Wondering when they can sit down. Wondering how to control what happens next. They know what this means. Know it immediately. Know it in their bones. The gangster escaped. The typecast broke. The property became a person. The system just lost a battle in public. On radio, in front of America. Can't bury this. Can't spin this. Can't control this. James Cagney just proved independence works. Cagney stands. Francis releases his hand. He doesn't look at her. Doesn't look at anyone at table 7. Doesn't acknowledge the applause. Just stands. Buttons his tuxedo jacket. Single button. Center. Straightens his crooked bow tie with 2 fingers. Quick adjustment. Then walks 15 feet to the aisle. Sidestepping past 2 people at his table who stand back to give him room. 60 feet down the aisle toward the stage. 92 steps total, not figurative, literal. 92 steps from table 7 to stage center. Every possible person who contributed in any possible way to the film. 7 minutes of performative gratitude. 7 minutes of telling the industry exactly what it wants to hear, that success is collaborative, that studios make stars possible, that actors owe their careers to the system that employs them. People shift in seats. Polite applause that starts to feel like obligation. Starts to feel like endurance. 7 minutes is a long time. Long enough for the orchestra to wonder if they should play her off. Long enough for the host to wonder if he should intervene. Long enough for everyone in the room to remember this moment as the Oscar speech that wouldn't end. Cagney watches, takes notes mentally, not about what to say, about what not to say, about how gratitude can become performance, how thank yous can become politics, how an acceptance speech isn't just thanks, it's a public statement of debt. An acknowledgement of hierarchy, a reinforcement of the system that gave you the award. Greer Garson finishes. Finally, applause, relief more than approval. Then, the moment, the one people came for, the category that matters. And now, Best Actor. The presenter opens the envelope. Gary Cooper presenting. Tall, handsome, represents everything Hollywood thinks a leading man should be. 6'3", strong jaw, all-American, the kind of actor who gets cast as heroes, as cowboys, as men who save the day and get the girl. Gary Cooper represents the system working exactly as designed. Star created by studio, career managed by handlers, image carefully controlled, success measured in box office dollars and awards. Everything James Cagney isn't. Cagney's jaw tightens, not dramatically, just a millimeter, muscle engaging, barely visible to anyone not watching carefully. The way a fighter's fist closes before the bell rings. Automatic, physiological, body preparing for impact even when the mind stays calm. Francis's hand moves, 3 inches across white tablecloth, now touching his, palm to palm, pressure, steady, not squeezing, not demanding response, just present, just saying without words, I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here. She knows, has known him since they were teenagers, knows what this moment means. Not pride, not validation, something else, something that doesn't have a clean word. The feeling of proving wrong every person who tried to make you smaller than you are. The feeling of succeeding in the exact way they said you couldn't. The feeling of breaking free from the cage they built and flying while they watch. Gary Cooper opens the envelope, pauses, looks at the card, smiles slightly. James Cagney, Yankee Doodle Dandy. The room erupts. Standing ovation. Instant. 1,500 people on their feet. Applause like thunder. Genuine, not polite industry applause. Real applause. The kind that happens when people who understand craft recognize excellence. When people who work in film see a performance that transcends technique and becomes art. Even the studio heads stand. They have to. Cameras watching, radio broadcasting, 18 million Americans listening. Appearances matter, must look gracious, must look supportive, must look like the system works, like studios and actors collaborate harmoniously towards shared artistic goals. But watch their faces. Watch carefully. Watch Jack Warner in row 1. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Mouth curves upward. Eyes stay flat. That's not joy. That's management. That's a man doing what's required while calculating next moves. Watch Louis B. Mayer. His applause is 3 seconds shorter than everyone else's. Tops clapping while others continue. Small statement. Silent message. Watch Daryl Zanuck. Looks at his watch while standing. Checking the time. Wondering when this will end. Wondering when they can sit down. Wondering how to control what happens next. They know what this means. Know it immediately. Know it in their bones. The gangster escaped. The typecast broke. The property became a person. The system just lost a battle in public. On radio, in front of America. Can't bury this. Can't spin this. Can't control this. James Cagney just proved independence works. Cagney stands. Francis releases his hand. He doesn't look at her. Doesn't look at anyone at table 7. Doesn't acknowledge the applause. Just stands. Buttons his tuxedo jacket. Single button. Center. Straightens his crooked bow tie with 2 fingers. Quick adjustment. Then walks 15 feet to the aisle. Sidestepping past 2 people at his table who stand back to give him room. 60 feet down the aisle toward the stage. 92 steps total. Not figurative. Literal. 92 steps from table 7 to stage center. He counted them yesterday during rehearsal. The Academy always does rehearsal the day before. Always prepares. Always measures. Always scripts everything except the winner's speech. Can't script that. Can't control that. That's the only moment in the entire evening that belongs entirely to the winner. Cagney didn't write a speech. Didn't prepare remarks. Didn't make notes. Nothing. He walks. Past tables. Past faces he knows. Past faces he doesn't. Past actors and directors and producers and studio executives and everyone who makes Hollywood Hollywood. Camera 1 tracks him from stage left. Camera 2 from stage right. Camera 3 overhead catching the walk from above. Radio announcers describing the scene for listeners who can't see. James Cagney walking to the stage now. Standing ovation. Thunderous applause. This is a remarkable moment, folks. Cagney nominated for a musical role after years of gangster pictures. This is his first Oscar. Cagney reaches the stage. 3 wooden steps. Handrail on the right. He doesn't use the handrail. Doesn't need it. Climbs the steps. First step creaks. Wood old. Sound barely audible under the applause, but he hears it. Hears everything. Always has. Actor's awareness. Dancer's precision. Knowing exactly where your body is in space, where every foot lands, where every joint bends. Second step. Third step. Stage level now. Gary Cooper extends his right hand. Cagney shakes it. Brief. Professional. Cooper's other hand extends the Oscar statue. Gold-plated bronze. 8.5 pounds. 13.5 inches tall. Art Deco design. Sword in hands. Standing on film reel. Symbol of achievement in American cinema. Symbol of validation by peers. Symbol that you made something worth remembering. Cagney takes it. Left hand. Statue is heavier than he expected. Heavier than 8 pounds should feel. But it's not weight. It's meaning. 20 years compressed into 8 pounds of metal. 63 films. 42 gangsters. 1 lawsuit. 1 independent production. 1 dance number that made a nation remember joy during war. All of it in 8 pounds. The applause continues. 30 seconds. 40. 50. Shows no sign of stopping. Gary Cooper steps back. Gives Cagney the stage. The microphone stands center. 4 feet away. Cagney doesn't move toward it. Just stands. Statue in left hand. Right hand at his side. Not in pocket. Not behind back. Just relaxed. Hanging. Waiting. He stands there. Lets the applause continue. Lets it peak. Lets it start to fade naturally. Doesn't rush. Doesn't perform false modesty. Just waits until the room quiets because people want to hear what he'll say. The applause begins to fade. People settling back into seats. Shuffling sounds. Fabric against fabric. Chair legs adjusting. Coughs suppressed. Silence approaching. 1,500 people waiting. Expecting the speech. The thank yous. The list of names. Director, producer, cast, crew, studio, agent, family, God, country, America. That's the formula. That's what you do when you win an Oscar. You thank everyone. You acknowledge debt. You reinforce the collaborative nature of filmmaking. You tell the industry what it wants to hear, that success is shared, that no one succeeds alone, that you owe your achievement to the system that made it possible. Cagney has a different formula. Has had it since yesterday when he decided not to write a speech. Since last week when he realized what this moment would mean. Since last month when the nomination came through and he understood that winning wouldn't just be personal validation. Would be political statement. Would be proof that the system is breakable. He steps toward the microphone. 2 steps. Close now but not too close. Maintains 6 inches of distance. His breathing steady. No nervousness. No hesitation. Just clarity. Absolute clarity about what he's going to say and why. His voice when it comes is quiet. Conversational. Not performing. Not projecting. Not trying to fill the room. Just speaking. Like he's talking to one person in an empty space. Thank you very much. 4 words. He steps back from the microphone. Bows slightly. Head dips forward. 15 degrees. Brief acknowledgement of the room. then turns, walks off stage. That's it. That's the speech. 4 words, 5 syllables, 2 seconds of sound. The room freezes. Confusion ripples through 1,500 people simultaneously. Did he forget his speech? Is he coming back? Medical issue. Stage fright. Is this a joke? Where's the rest? Where are the thank yous? Where is the actual speech? The orchestra doesn't know what to do. Should they play him off? Should they wait? Should they do anything? The conductor looks at the musical director. Musical director looks at the ceremony producer. Producer frozen. Didn't plan for this. Didn't rehearse this. Didn't imagine this scenario. Every Oscar winner gives a speech. That's how it works. That's the entire point of the moment. Win. Thank people. Reinforce the system. What just happened doesn't fit the script. Gary Cooper still stands on stage. Awkward. Doesn't know where to look. Can't leave yet because the next presenter hasn't come up. Can't say anything because it's not his moment. Just stands there representing confusion. Cagney descends the stage steps. Doesn't look back. Doesn't wave. Doesn't acknowledge the cameras. Just walks down the 3 steps. First one still creaks. Second, third, stage level to floor level. Back to the aisle. 92 steps in reverse. Back to table 7. The room stays frozen. Nobody knows how to react. Clap. That seems wrong. The speech is over, but it wasn't really a speech. Stay silent. That seems rude. Do something. What? Nobody trained for this scenario. Oscar winners give speeches. That's the rule. Unwritten but absolute. You don't just say thank you and leave. You perform gratitude. You acknowledge debts. You play the game. James Cagney didn't play the game. Cagney walks. Camera 1 tries to track him but loses him in the crowd. Camera 2 catches his back. Camera 3 overhead shows the top of his head moving through tables back to row 3. Radio announces scramble. Well, that was James Cagney, folks. Very brief remarks. Very humble. Very much in character for Mr. Cagney. A man of few words. A professional, letting his work speak for itself. Now we move to announcers filling dead air with interpretation. Making sense of something that doesn't make sense. Fitting it into a narrative that audiences can understand. Humble, professional, letting work speak. That's the story. That's how it will be reported. That's how it will be remembered. But that's not what happened. What happened was calculated, precise, a 4-word demolition of Hollywood's thank you industrial complex. Cagney reaches table 7, sits down, places the Oscar on the white tablecloth. Next to his water glass. Next to Francis's purse, gold statue reflecting light, 8.5 pounds of validation sitting on hotel linen. Francis looks at him, doesn't say anything, just looks, studies his face, searching for something, regret, satisfaction, nervousness. She sees none of it. Sees only Cagney, the same Cagney she married, the same Cagney who sued Warner Brothers, the same Cagney who formed his own production company, the same Cagney who spent 20 years refusing to be smaller than he is. His face is neutral, not smiling, not frowning, just done, task complete, statement made, moving on. 3 tables away, Jack Warner leans toward his assistant, whispers something, low, urgent. Assistant nods, takes notes in a small leather notebook. Already planning, already strategizing, already preparing damage control, already constructing the studio's narrative for tomorrow's press releases. The story will be that Cagney was overwhelmed, emotional, grateful, too moved to speak properly. Words failed him in the moment. That's what the official statement will say. That's what the trade papers will print. That's how Warner Brothers will frame it. Humble actor overcome with emotion. Perfect story. Makes Cagney look gracious. Makes the studio look supportive. Maintains the illusion that everyone is grateful, everyone is happy, everyone loves the system that made this moment possible. But that's not what happened. What happened was refusal. Calculated, deliberate, precise. Cagney refused to perform gratitude for cameras. Refused to thank the studio that tried to bury his film. Refused to acknowledge the system that tried to prevent this moment. Refused to play the game that every other Oscar winner plays. Because here's what a long Oscar speech means. What it really means. It means you owe the director who fought for you. The producer who believed in you. The studio that financed you. The system that made you. The speech is a public acknowledgement of debt. Of hierarchy. Of power structure. Of the understanding that you didn't win this alone. You won this because the machine worked. Because the system functioned. Because everyone played their assigned role in the collaborative process that creates American cinema. The speech reinforces the system. Every thank you another brick in the wall. Every acknowledged debt another chain. Every named name another reminder that success in Hollywood is never individual, always collective, always dependent on studios and producers and executives who control access to the machinery that creates the dreams. Cagney refused to reinforce that system, refused to acknowledge those debts, refused to say Jack Warner's name into a microphone broadcasting to 18 million Americans. Refused to give Warner Brothers the satisfaction of hearing their studio praised for producing a film they tried to sabotage. Refused to play the role of grateful actor thanking benevolent studio for opportunity generously provided. Because that's not what happened. Warner Brothers didn't provide opportunity. Cagney created opportunity by forming his own company, finding his own financing, making his own film despite the studio, not because of it. Yankee Doodle Dandy succeeded despite Warner Brothers. The Oscar validates that success. And Cagney refused to pretend otherwise. 4 words was generosity. 4 words was mercy. 4 words was the maximum acknowledgement the industry deserved for an award recognizing a role they tried to stop him from playing. More words would have been lies. Longer speech would have been performance. Thanking people would have been rewriting history. Cagney gave them truth instead. Thank you very much. For what? For nothing. For the opportunity to prove you all wrong. For the chance to demonstrate that independence works. For the moment that validates everything I've been fighting for 20 years. Thank you for that, very much. Now I'm leaving. 4 words. Perfect economy. Perfect precision. Perfect representation of James Cagney's entire philosophy. Do the work. Let the work speak. Don't explain. Don't justify. Don't perform gratitude you don't feel. Just do the job. Do it well. Move on. The ceremony continues. Cagney sits at table 7. Oscar on tablecloth. Francis's hand finds his again. Palm to palm. No words. Just presence. Just the quiet understanding of 2 people who've known each other since before any of this mattered. Best Picture announced. Mrs. Miniver wins. Long speeches. Multiple producers. Studio head joins them on stage. 10 minutes of thank yous. Lists of names. Acknowledgements that go on and on. The contrast is sharp. Obvious. Impossible to miss. Greer Garson's 7-minute speech. Mrs. Miniver's 10-minute Best Picture speech. James Cagney's 4-word speech. By the time the ceremony ends 2 hours later, people are talking. Not about Mrs. Miniver, about Cagney's silence, about the shortest Oscar speech in Academy history, about what it means, about what he didn't say, about the absence that spoke louder than presence. Reporters cluster outside the hotel, waiting for Cagney, wanting explanation, wanting quotes, wanting to ask why he didn't give a real speech. Cagney exits through a side door, prearranged with hotel security. Avoids the press entirely, drives home, alone with Francis, doesn't stop for after parties, doesn't do interviews, doesn't justify, doesn't explain, silence again, silence saying everything. The next morning, every newspaper in America runs the story. Cagney's 4 words, some call it humble, some call it rude, some call it mysterious, some call it refreshing, some call it disrespectful, nobody calls it what it actually was. A middle finger wrapped in politeness. A rejection gift wrapped as gratitude. A statement that winning an Oscar doesn't mean surrendering dignity, doesn't mean performing gratitude you don't feel, doesn't mean thanking people who tried to stop you from winning. Warner Brothers releases a statement by noon. Carefully written, carefully vetted. James Cagney was deeply honored by the Academy's recognition, overwhelmed with emotion, grateful to Warner Brothers Studio for their continued support of his career. Looking forward to future collaborations. Every word calculated, every word crafted to control the narrative, every word false. Cagney doesn't issue a correction, doesn't call reporters, doesn't write an editorial, doesn't need to. His silence speaks louder than their press release. Everyone who matters understands what happened. Everyone who works in Hollywood knows what 4 words means. Everyone who's ever fought with a studio or sued for better terms or refused to be typecast understands exactly what Cagney didn't say and why he didn't say it. 3 weeks later, Warner Brothers contacts Cagney's agent. Meeting requested. New contract discussion. Cagney's current deal expires in 1946. Studio wants to negotiate early. Wants to lock him in. Wants to prevent him from leaving. Wants to maintain control. Meeting happens in Jack Warner's office. Same office where contracts get signed, careers get made, decisions get handed down from on high. Cagney sits across from Warner. Desk between them. Mahogany. Expensive. Solid. Symbol of permanence. Symbol of power. Warner makes an offer. Better terms than the current contract. More money. $25,000 per film instead of 15. Script approval on 3 films per year. Director consultation on major projects. Everything Cagney wanted 7 years ago. Everything they refused to give until he sued. Everything they're now offering because that 4-word speech scared them. Scared them because it demonstrated independence. Demonstrated that Cagney doesn't need their validation, doesn't need their platform, doesn't need their carefully constructed star-making machinery. Cagney reads the offer, doesn't sign, tells Warner he'll consider it, walks out, takes 2 weeks, lets them wait, lets them wonder, lets them feel what it's like when the property stops behaving like property and starts behaving like a person with options, with agency, with power. He signs eventually, not because he needs Warner Brothers, Because the war is on and the studio is making war films and Cagney believes in the war effort. Believes in using his platform to sell war bonds, to boost morale, to contribute however he can to defeating fascism. So he signs a contract that gives him more control than any Warner Brothers actor has ever had. Signs a contract that makes him the highest paid star on the lot. Signs a contract that proves the four-word speech worked. Proves silence is leverage. Proves refusing to play the game changes the game. Power dynamic shifts. Permanently, irreversibly. That Oscar speech didn't just win him better contract terms. It won something more valuable. Proof that silence can be louder than speeches. That 4 words can mean more than 400. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is almost nothing at all. Over the next 20 years, other actors remember that moment. Remember Cagney's 4 words. Remember what it looked like when a star refused to grovel. When Marlon Brando becomes difficult on sets in the 1950s, demanding script changes, challenging directors, refusing to conform to studio expectations, people remember Cagney. When James Dean shows up late, argues about character motivation, insists on his interpretation over the director's, people remember Cagney. When the studio system begins collapsing in the 1960s, when actors start demanding profit participation, when stars become free agents instead of contract property, everyone remembers Cagney. The man who won an Oscar and refused to thank the machine that tried to stop him from winning it. Cagney makes 14 more films after 1943. None of them gangsters. Not one. Not a single gun. Not a single death in the street. War heroes, military officers, ship captains, business owners, executives, fathers, real people, complex people, people with dimensions beyond violence. The roles Warner Brothers swore he could never play. The roles audiences supposedly wouldn't accept him in. The roles critics said would fail. He plays them exclusively until retirement because that Oscar-proved typecasting is a lie. A lie studios tell to maintain control. A lie that benefits the system but hurts the artists. A lie Cagney refused to believe and proved false by making Yankee Doodle Dandy succeed despite everyone saying it couldn't. He retires in 1961 at age 62, buys a farm in upstate New York. Martha's Vineyard, 750 acres. Horses, cattle, vegetables, becomes a farmer, works the land, physical labor, honest work, far from Hollywood, far from studios, far from cameras and speeches and performances of gratitude. Lives quietly for 25 years. Rarely gives interviews, rarely appears publicly, just lives. Never displays the Oscar, keeps it in a closet wrapped in a towel. Not hidden, just not displayed, because the Oscar wasn't the point. Never was the point. The 4 words were the point. The refusal was the point. The message was the point. The Oscar is just metal. 8.5 pounds of bronze. Symbol that means nothing without context. The context is the 4 words. The context is what he didn't say. The context is the silence that spoke louder than any speech could have. Decades later, film students study that Oscar moment. Film schools show the footage. 4 words. Watch how he doesn't smile, doesn't perform gratitude, doesn't play the game, doesn't give them what they want. Students watch in classrooms, write papers, analyze the moment. Professors assign essays. What did Cagney's refusal to give a traditional Oscar speech signify about power dynamics in Hollywood? Students struggle with the answer because the answer requires understanding that politeness can be protest. That brevity can be statement. That refusing to thank people isn't rude when those people don't deserve thanks. Professors explain the context, the lawsuit, the independent production, the studio sabotage, the industry blacklisting, the typecasting, the cage they built around him, the Oscar validating his escape, the 4 words refusing to acknowledge their role in that validation. Students begin to understand. This wasn't just an actor being brief. This was an actor making a statement about power, about control, about the difference between owing someone and acknowledging someone. Frances Cagney, interviewed years after James dies in 1986, is asked about that night. About the 4 words, about whether James regretted the brevity. She laughs, real laugh, not polite, not performing, just genuine amusement at the question. Says James prepared for that moment longer than any role he ever played. Spent weeks thinking about what to say. Wrote draft after draft, thank you speeches, gracious speeches, humble speeches, speeches that thanked everyone, speeches that acknowledged everyone, speeches that played the game perfectly, then threw them all away. All the drafts, all the preparation, all the careful wording, threw it all away 3 days before the ceremony because he realized something. Realized the most honest response was the simplest one. Realized that everything he wanted to say could be compressed into 4 words. Thank you very much, not for the Oscar specifically. For the opportunity to prove you all wrong. That's what the 4 words meant. That's what the brevity communicated. Not gratitude to the Academy. Not thanks to the industry. Not acknowledgement of the collaborative process. Just recognition that the war was over and he'd won. The battle for his career. The fight for artistic control. The struggle to be seen as more than the roles they cast him in. He'd won completely, decisively, permanently, and winners don't need long speeches. Winners don't need to explain. Winners don't need to justify. Winners just need to show up. Accept, leave, let the victory speak for itself. March 2, 1943. 4 words, 8.5 pounds of bronze. 92 steps off stage. 2 seconds of sound. Lifetime of statement. The shortest Oscar speech in history. The loudest silence Hollywood ever heard. And somewhere in the audience, sitting in their expensive tuxedos at their premium tables, the studio executives who tried to bury Yankee Doodle Dandy sat in their seats and finally understood what James Cagney had been trying to tell them for 20 years. You don't own people, you don't own talent, you don't own dreams, and when someone proves that by winning despite you, not because of you, the only appropriate response is 4 words of acknowledgement and a quick exit. Because staying longer, saying more, that would imply you owed them something. James Cagney didn't owe Hollywood a damn thing. He'd already paid in full. 20 years, 63 films, 42 gangsters, 1 lawsuit, 1 independent production, 1 dance number that saved the nation's spirit during wartime. 1 Oscar, 4 words, done. The microphone went silent that night. But the message echoed for decades. Still echoes now, 80 years later. Every time an actor negotiates for creative control. Every time a performer refuses to be typecast. Every time someone in Hollywood remembers that the talent is the product and the product shouldn't apologize for being excellent. Every time someone realizes that gratitude is earned, not owed. Every time someone understands that you can say thank you without surrendering dignity. James Cagney taught that lesson with 4 words. Thank you very much. Then he walked away, took his 8.5 pounds of bronze, went home, never looked back, never needed to, never doubted, never regretted, never explained. The silence said everything, and Hollywood, for once, had no choice but to listen.